What happens to Gaza after the Israel-Hamas war is finished? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told ABC News this week that Israel will, for an indefinite period, have security responsibility for the territory. Following a two-day meeting of foreign ministers from the group of 7 leading industrial democracies in Tokyo, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Wednesday Hamas must be defeated, but also gave a message to Israel.
It's also clear that Israel cannot occupy Gaza. Now, the reality is that there may be a need for some transition period at the end of the conflict, but it is imperative that the Palestinian people be central to governance in Gaza and in the West Bank as well, and that again we don't see a reoccupation.
Israel and its Western backers must have a plan for post-conflict Gaza, says analyst Yossi Meckelberg.
What happens if Hamas disappears as a political and military power? Who is sucked into this vacuum? It might be even worse than Hamas. I think we move into an interim period, and I think there is important. I really think should be a regional element to this.
US-Israeli ties remain strong, but there are disagreements, says Meckelberg.
They don't trust Netanyahu. They don't trust the current government, and they know that giving too much of a blank check can be dangerous.
In only the second joint statement from the group since the October 7th attack, G7 foreign ministers condemned Hamas and demanded the release of hostages and called for pauses in the conflict to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza.
I believe it's important that the G7 was able to put out its first unified message as a written statement regarding the agreement.
The G7 did not call for a more permanent ceasefire. Across the world, there have been protests calling for an end to the war. There is a danger that the conflict exacerbates global divisions, according to Meckelberg.
It's very tricky because the G7 obviously represent the more affluent part of the world, and the one that much of the resentment is directed at of neglecting and taking an approach which protects their interests but not the rest of the world's interests. And I think, you see, I for one find it difficult to feel sorry for their predicament, because the neglect of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was criminal.
Meanwhile, the G7 reiterated its support for Ukraine as it continues to fight Russia's invasion. The group also condemned North Korea's missile tests and arms transfers to Moscow. Henry Ridgwell, VOA News, London.